Turn our attention to Gaelic football. It's a jam-packed weekend of Gaelic football action in games in both the All-Ireland group stages and the Tailteann Cup as well. Delighted to welcome the former Donegal star Eamon McGee to the show this morning. Eamon, how are things?
Hi Shane, how are you?
Not so bad, thanks for hopping on. We'll get into the games in just a second, but you had a tweet that was kind of along similar lines of what I was saying during the week. The Rossies are getting some serious heat for the long periods of possession against Dublin last week. Some calls that Gaelic football is dying or already dead. What's your take on this?
Again, Shane. How many times have we heard that Gaelic football is dead? I think we heard it in the introduction of the blanket defence and numerous other times after it now. So, no, my thoughts, I actually don't mind the possession game. I just kind of find it intriguing to see how teams try and work it out. And I'll add in, I don't like keeping possession because we see it in the club games when teams wouldn't be as coached as well, and they're keeping possession for possession's sake. I like when teams are keeping possession but probing at the same time. They're coached well. There's an overall purpose, but we've seen it in games throughout the year where it's just keep ball, keep goal, and there's no overall goal with the whole thing. So I'll have to admit I'm in the minority now. I think I don't know where you sit, Shane, but I think at 10% and the 90% want to see that fast flowing, Gaelic football as people would have remembered it now. So maybe we'll have to talk about change.
I'm probably along similar lines to yourself. I actually quite, in a weird way, enjoy the periods of possession. I guess the argument is that the onus is on the likes of Dublin and the teams playing that type of team to get the ball off them. Now that's easier said than done. There are people calling for rule changes. Eamon, I don't know if that's something that's crossed your mind.
Some of it, lads, I'm sorry to be the dissenting, I'm definitely in the 90%. How are you, Eamon? Some of it is desperate to look at.
But how do you change it?
There's loads of all sorts of stuff has been introduced about like passing the ball back or shot clocks or whatever it might be, but some of that lateral stuff in and around the defensive D, as they try to, admittedly there's an intrigue about it, and as you say, but God, for long periods of time, particularly I find it towards the end of games. Let's say there's 5, 6, 7 minutes to go in games at times and a team is a couple of points ahead and over and back we go, and it doesn't make for a great spectacle.
And I get that, but that's the way it's going. The rules of engagement in Gaelic football have changed. So this is part of it. If you think back to the Derry Monaghan game last weekend, where Monaghan went down a man to the lost a man, the black Gary Mohan, was it?
Yeah, Gary Mohan.
And Derry made the decision, right, we're going to push up here. We're going to push up, and Monaghan are down to 14 men, and we're going to try and turn them over higher up the field. And even at that, Derry are physically in brilliant shape, very well coached. Monaghan still worked the ball. So the best thing Derry could have done was sit back, and Monaghan would have to play that that possession style of football. So that's the rules of engagement. It's all catered towards, or all based towards, that the team that drops back, it suits them, and the possession game, it suits them to work it out. So until we change that's just the way it's going to be. And this thing of go out and give it a go and die in your shield and play with honour and enjoy the game, it's nonsense. We've seen that throughout so many sports where managers, coaches, players just want to win. So that's just the way it is. And the rule changes, if we're going to go at it, and I think Adrian is in the 90% there. If we're going to go at it, we need to just strip it all back. We can't just keep on putting rules and creating this big massive book where there's about 1,000 different rules, because the game's so hard to ref. So I think we're going to have to strip it back and start from scratch here.
Yeah, the shot clock one it's a great idea on paper, but I don't see how.
I don't know that it's the solution, plausible. By the way. I'm just throwing it out there, and I think Eamon is right. Like in terms of the rules that have been suggested to bring in now, this freshers testing and that stuff, that doesn't do anything to address what we're talking about.
Well, what do you make on those ones, Eamon? Even the kick out, is it the freshers competitions next year? They're going to bring this rule. The kick out has to go out a certain distance.
No, there's rules, and I like the offensive mark, because it's actually, despite all the detractors, it's taken in more kicking. Teams are kicking more, but this kick out rule, where there's a kind of nostalgia where we just kick the ball out, catch it, and then kick it on again. I think we're trying to hang on to that there. And the real pragmatic point of it is that, like, I play Gaelic football in Mayo, and there's a constant wind, and you'd struggle. There's some keepers who struggle to kick it out to as far as the 45. So, you know, we have to take that in, and we'll see it more now as more outfield players go into the goals, that they don't have the distance in the kicks. So long term, I don't think that kick out rule is going to be a rule now. So I think we have to go back to the drawing board with it.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on how the rules change over the coming years, no doubt. Loads of games this weekend, and I don't even know where we start, but certainly tomorrow, Saturday, we have Cork, Kerry and Páirc Uí Chaoimh at 3, Westmeath Galway then in Mullingar at 5 o'clock. You've Kildare against the Dubs in Kilkenny at the same time, in Tyrone Armagh at Healy Park and Omagh from 7. You have 4 games in the Talton Cup as well, and then on Sunday you have Mayo Louth in Castlebar from 2, Monaghan Clare in Clonus at 2, Roscommon playing Sligo in the Hyde at 3 o'clock, and Donegal against Derry in Ballybuffet from 4 p.m. and again 4 games in the Talton Cup. We might as well start with your own county, Donegal, Derry. Ballybuffet, certainly a fortress for Donegal in recent years, and
used to be
a fortress. That's fair. I was interested to see comments, or Aidan O'Rourke I think had avoided or decided not to do a media press conference a few weeks ago, and there was a couple of headlines about that, such as the intrigue in football around Donegal, and I think he himself had spoken recently about the media interest and how it maybe affected Donegal players. Is it different in Donegal? Like maybe the win over Clare changes things, but there's pressure on these Donegal players at the moment.
I don't think it's different. I think there's a load of counties out there where they're GA mad and they love their football, and you know, there's different local podcasts and a lot of different counties. There's different local newspapers, and GA's their main gig with it. So I don't think we're different in that regard, and we just are, you know, Gaelic football mad up here, and there's always an appetite, and you know, any wee GA story gathers legs. So we've seen it so many times. I've seen so many WhatsApp rumours up here in Donegal. So I wouldn't buy into it. I wouldn't buy in to say that we're different. And you know, the players have been brought up in that. There's not necessarily pressure. They just know the gig, and they know the game at this stage.
Will Donegal adopt some of the tactics that Monaghan kind of utilised against Derry? Monaghan seemed to learn from their mistakes from the previous game against the same opposition, certainly playing players like maybe Shane Kerry and Ryan McInnesby, players with a bit more pace to track back, but also push up in the Derry kick out as well. There are little ways in which you can get at that Derry team.
And that's one of the things I took great joy from watching Monaghan go at the Derry kick out. And I think in the way they went at it, now normally teams are going zonal these days, but they just went man to man, and really, and I thought that day was actually over, you know, because someone is always going to let you down in the man to man press, but Monaghan just dug it out and, you know, really put the pressure on it, and I think it threw Owen Lynch, you know, to see it. You know, he kind of took a wee wobble now. So I don't think Donegal will go man to mans as such on the kickouts, but they'll learn. There's different aspects in terms of the personnel and the personnel on the field that they'll definitely learn from. Donegal, Monaghan probably had more options. Donegal don't have the same riches and the same depth in their squad, so they might be a wee bit limited and hampered by that. But you could see possible changes, all right, in the team that started against Clare.
It was impressive, the Donegal performance in the second half against Clare. I think they outscored them 11-3, if I'm right in saying. And as you said, they mightn't have great scoring power, but if the likes of Kieran Thompson and Oisin Gallen can pop over their 4, 5, 6 points a piece, all of a sudden you're in with a chance. I guess on the opposite end of the scale, from a Donegal defensive perspective, Eamon, how do you handle Shane McGuigan? I know it's a perennial question, but
this is the one. You know, Shane McGuigan, we've seen the Armagh game and again in the Monaghan game, where Shane McGuigan just you know, took a notion and says we're not losing this game, and you know that's kind of the championship mentality. And sometime in the knockout stages that there's going to be a player or a defender that's going to wrap up Shane McGuigan, and that's where Derry will have to find another way. Do we have that player in Donegal at the minute? What the way confidence is and what the way we're setting up, I would just struggle now. I think there's potentially Bren McCole could pick him up, and Bren McCole is, you know, probably one of our better man marking defenders, but you know, it's a big ask to see him step up to shut down Shane McGuigan for the whole of the game.
The Tyrone Armagh game is one that immediately jumps out on off the paper as one of the big one. Yeah. It's the big one, certainly, and Ohm is not an easy place to go. But I was watching the Armagh Westmeath game last weekend, and like Westmeath, so unlucky not to get something out of that match, because I thought it was only the goal from Conor Turbot at the end really that scripted over the line. Adrian here, very sad, shaking his head. But
yeah, I was just going to say
but it was they did this.
With David Brady on the previous Friday, and everybody was laughing at the fact that he said Westmeath were going to beat one of these teams, and I was following that going, Jesus Christ, he's a genius.
He was right though, because they did everything right, Westmeath, and clearly Armagh have their frailties.
They definitely do, and I put Derry in that bracket, and that's the thing with Tyrone are going into this with hope, and the same with Donegal and into the Derry game, and Tyrone are probably in a better spot. They'll have learned, and it's so hard to gauge with the way the season's set up. It's so different to what I'm used to in the terms of the way that we would go at a season back in the day now. So it's hard. Like, teams are going well, they'll go up the graph and then they'll drop down and then they'll go up again. So it's hard to pick that. Probably Galway or the farm team, but outside of that, it's hard to get a gauge in where everybody else is at now. So Armagh have definitely big problems coming into the game, but they could turn around and put on a performance again, because they have so much talent in that offensive unit.
One that we want to ask you before we wrap is about obviously Croke Park tomorrow evening, and you talk about getting a gauge. Like, I think that Dublin are very much in that category, and I was interested to see Paul Beelan asking big questions of Dublin in the Independent this morning. He was saying a strong sense that the group has run out of steam, a lot of basic errors, and like really concerningly not showing the same hunger.
And that's the one. We're trying to get an answer why Dublin aren't operating the way. Like, they're always going to be a drop off, but the drop off has been pretty big in some of the games. And you wonder why, because when you go through the Dublin team to start against Roscommon, there's still a lot of talent, and there's still a lot of big players from that. The best team arguably that ever play Gaelic football, so there should be still muscle memory, if that makes sense, in terms of what they did, but they've been so wasteful, and I think it's a mentality problem, and I think that if you were to put a blame on anybody, it has to go on the all round. It's not just players, it's not just management, it's an all round thing. Desi should be getting more out of them, and the players should be pushing it on more, and not just maybe ticking a box and going through the motions. But as I say, we'll get through, and we'll get through the preliminary quarterfinals, and we'll get to the quarterfinals, and then maybe we'll see then with the games with the edge, and we'll know more about where teams truly are at.
Yeah, certainly concerning when you see from a Dublin perspective, only scoring 111 in Croke Park is a rare enough thing. Are Mayo legit this year, Eamon? Like, Aidan O'Shea seems to have a new breed of confidence. They've defenders come in, the likes of Callan as well, that are brilliant. Can they actually do it?
I want to say yes with Mayo. I want to say it, but Mayo have found a way throughout the years to let you down. So until they actually go and do it, I'll hold fire. But there's so much positives coming out of them, and the way they're looking, and the form of Aidan O'Shea and what he's, and he typifies where Mayo was at, and with his attitude and his work rate and his ability to just do his role, and there's so much positives, but we've been burned so many times by Mayo in the past, so we'll hold fire for another way.
Kerry is the other one, isn't it, really? Because it's hard to know where they're at. They obviously, of course, had a big win in the Munster final, but then that defeat to Mayo in Killarney was very, very disappointing, not just from a result but performance perspective. Of course they'll have time to bounce back, but they might have now this extra game in the preliminary quarter-final, less rest maybe, not finishing top of the group can have its ramifications, but can Kerry come good? It's hard to rule them out.
Oh, it's hard to rule them out. Any team with Clifford in it, you're hard to rule out. And I think they've got to find the defensive. That's what won them. Although Clifford, right, we'll go with Clifford, but apart from that, the way they defended and their defensive structure helped them win the All Ireland. And they were I don't think they conceded. Was it 1 goal last year? And then in the first half against Mayo, they coughed up 3 or 4 Mayo probably should have 3 or 4 goal chances. So they've got to get that sorted, and they've got to get Seanie O'Shea back, playing well, and maybe taking a wee bit of pressure off Clifford and freeze him up a wee bit. And the big one for me is just getting that defensive structure right again, and they just build from that and get the ball to David Clifford.
Yeah, as simple as that. I do think that Mayo game is a footnote in history, by the way. I think at the end of it, the season is done. It'll never be mentioned again. Eamon, we're going to have you back on where we're going to ask you to recommend some rule changes here, so we'll do that at some point over the next while, because I think there's something in that, and I don't want the 90%, the loud 90% overruling the 10% good ideas. So we'll chat to you again down the track.
Good man, Adrian.
Thanks a million.